All right, welcome to another exciting episode. This is it, gang, of the Neville Goddard podcast. My name is Mr. 2020. It is 6:38 a.m. It is still pitch black here in Melbourne, Australia. Our days are getting shorter. Your days are getting longer in the old country. And today we're going to dive into the almost adventures of Uncle Jimmy Chuck. The difference between fantasizing and ownership. Because fantasizing feels fun. Fantasizing feels nice. But Uncle Jimmy Chuck almost took his adventures. I want you to have the adventure of a lifetime because you are God having the adventure of a lifetime. Let's dive in. Let's dive deeper. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing the show. All right, so Uncle Jimmy Chuck used to sit on his porch, swinging his swing. And he would have been in his 40s at the time. I was just a young'un. Uncle Jimmy Chuck, he used to have this fantasy about driving around the country in his Winnebago. And Uncle Jimmy Chuck, he was a good man. He just sat there and smoked his pipe. Sip a little bit of whiskey or coffee. Talk about his adventures, where he was going to go in his Winnebago. He had road maps. He had National Geographic magazine. He cut them up. He had his wife. It drove her nuts. He had this big old dinner table nobody could sit at because it was covered with maps and photos and stuff about where he was going in his Winnebago. And 20 years later, he's dead. Never got the Winnebago. You know, some studies say that we have 80,000 thoughts per day. 80,000 of them. And some studies say that 80% of them are negative. Just saying. Uncle Jimmy Chuck, he had probably 80,000 thoughts a day about his adventures with his Winnebago. But Uncle Jimmy Chuck never believed in the reality of his imaginal act. Uncle Jimmy Chuck, he felt it fun, but he didn't feel it real. There's a massive difference. And I don't want you to be Uncle Jimmy Chuck. I don't want you to have fantasies about a Winnebago. If that's your dream, remember, Neville Goddard says, your desires are divine in origin. He also says every desire has its own plan and power. You're the operant power. All you got to do is flick the switch. All you got to do is experience the reality of your imaginal act. When you experience the reality of your imaginal act and you don't dig it up, Uncle Jimmy Chuck used to dig it up with someday. Someday never comes true, gang. The feeling of someday makes it never, as far as I can tell. Someday Uncle Jimmy Chuck will get that there Winnebago. And he ran out of some days. Uncle Jimmy Chuck taught me a lot about this. He was a lovely fella. Did all right. Never bothered buying the Winnebago. He had all kinds of rationalizations about that. The tomatoes, didn't want to pull up the missus from the garden. I think she would have gladly went. But meanwhile, do you believe in the reality of your imaginal act? This is not where you go, I believe, and you put your hands in the air. This is when you notice. You see, before I get out of bed, Joseph Goddard. Before I get out of bed, I imagine 5 to 10, 6 to 12 specific events of my day having gone my way. And they do. Stuff that's on my calendar. stuff that pops in that I know is for today. The thing is, if you do it with a someday feel, you're not going to get what we get. There's another way you can dig up your seeds, and that's with wouldn't that be nice? With wouldn't it be nice? But knowing that it ain't going to happen. We're trying to figure out the way. So there's all kind of sneaky ways which you get in your own way, ways that you stay loopy. And you get to notice, can you notice those? Meanwhile, it's 5 minutes into the podcast. It is 6:31 a.m. It is still dark outside in Melbourne, Australia. The birds are finally beginning to come out and come alive in Melbourne, Australia. They sing the song of Thanksgiving before the sun comes up. They know the reality. The sun comes up in the morning. In the Remarkable group, we're exploring this with the producer. The producer is associated with the East in the way that we're exploring it. The sun comes up in the East every morning, and you get to ask yourself a question every day, every moment of the day, if you wish. You get to just notice, what do I wish to give life to? Wouldn't this be cool? See, Uncle Jimmy Chuck went, wouldn't this be cool? But he didn't feel it already real. He felt it would be fun. There's a massive difference. So I give thanks. I experience thankfulness naturally because I know who I am and how this works. I know who I am and how this works because I choose to play every day. I do begin every day with Joseph Goddard. Every single day, gang. And do I have misses? You betcha. And here's the other side of the coin. Uncle Jimmy Chuck was waiting for everything to be perfect every day, all the time, before he took the plunge. And there are people I know that try to imagine everything every day, all the time, perfect. Neville said this will cushion the blows. In Dream Driven Day, we talk about speed bumps. Because there's going to be speed bumps, gang. You can't help but hit a speed bump. If you're going to McDonald's, you're going to hit potholes, speed bumps. There's going to be cracks in the road. You may hit a little traffic. No big deal. Because whenever you can accept, yeah, there was a speed bump, there's some traffic, I just got a red light, that doesn't mean McDonald's is gone. What it means is you stop looking for signs. If I get a red light, I will go to Hungry Jack's, otherwise known as Burger King. If I get a green light, I'll go to McDonald's. You pick. The other thing I noticed about Uncle Jimmy Chuck, he couldn't pick which Winnebago. I guess there's multiple kinds. He had flyers every year for the new ones. He made it about the Winnebago instead of making it about him. I can guarantee one thing. When you own your day, you own your destiny. Right? If you haven't joined us yet, DreamDrivenDay.com. There's a crass commercial. Dream Driven Day is the opportunity to work with us one-on-one in a small group and live. That's all I got to say. Go to DreamDrivenDay.com. Check out the details, because what happens when you seize the opportunity. Uncle Jimmy Chuck didn't do that. Uncle Jimmy Chuck stayed in the fantasy. The fantasy of the Winnebago. Keeping his options open. Evaluating the new Winnebagos every year. If he would have moved into ownership, when you own your day, you own your destiny. You get it? This is all about your life. All right, I guess that's what I got today. You need some attitude. If you're going to believe in the reality of your imaginal act, you need some attitude. You know all about that. If you got gold today, we dropped a few obvious suggestions. We've got things like DreamDrivenDay.com. We've got things like ManifestingMasteryCourse.com. And we've got all the goodies in the Neville Goddard Store.com. Because if not now, when? Someday. Have a great day. This is the voice of Mr. 2020 coming to you live from Melbourne, Australia. Click the like button, click the share button. Sharing is caring. Dive deeper. You know what to do. See ya.